Okay. Yes.
Welcome, everybody. This is Amy Krug. She's here in my office today, and she is a clinical social worker, a mindfulness teacher, a certified yoga instructor, and she's created great material around mindfulness and stress reduction in her own practice and in her own life. And I wanted her to come in and talk to us about mindfulness today because I think it's an amazing tool for you, for your health, for your well-being, and there's certainly lots of research behind it, and there's even research behind it when it comes to fertility. So welcome, Amy.
Thank you.
And start us off. Tell us what mindfulness is. What is it? How would you explain it?
So mindfulness, and I'm sure many of the audience has heard a lot about mindfulness because it's become very popular in the last few years. So there's lots of mindfulness practices. I go back to who I consider the guru in my teaching on mindfulness, which is John Kabat-Zinn.
Right.
And he describes mindfulness as being on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmental. So those are the three values and attributes of mindfulness.
Great. So on purpose, non-judgmental. What was the third one?
In the moment.
In the moment. And imagine if we could all possess these practices a lot of the time, even not even all the time, because that's probably impossible, right? Okay. So tell me how one would implement mindfulness. How would it impact on someone's well-being, on their fertility? What would that look like?
Okay, so mindfulness, in my practice, I've worked a lot with individuals with lived trauma, mental health, anxiety, and depression, and it's been really a gift to see the effects it can have. And recently there's been a study, a groundbreaking study, which is, I think, really amazing. In Portugal, there was the Department of Psychology. They funded a study with women who were infertile and used mindfulness-based program as the treatment modality. And the results were pretty amazing based on the control group and the women that were part of the mindfulness-based program. They found a reduction in anxiety, an ability to do cognitive diffusing, which in essence really is about separating from some of the negative thought patterns and experiences, decreased in anxiety, and more of an acceptance and allowance for the values that these women adhere to, and also stress reduction. So the results were very promising.
Fantastic. So if we were going to adopt some of the principles or some of the benefits from this research study that's been done in Portugal in the group of women who had infertility and got benefit in their journey, what would be some of the things that you would suggest people could do to start taking advantage of this right away? Let's say they don't have a local mindfulness-based group or teacher that's whether focused on infertility or not. Let's say they don't have access to that. What could they do instead to get some of the benefits of this practice?
Sure. So I've come today, I'm going to share a practice with you.
Awesome.
And do it with you. I'm really excited about it. I've used this both in my yoga teaching, and I've created a group where I worked in the hospital, yoga for anxiety and depression and mindfulness, and I'm really passionate about it, and it's actually really challenging. So I always say it's a simple practice, but it's also a difficult practice, so to really be gentle with yourself. The practice of self-compassion is so essential. So a couple tips I'll give first, and then I'll lead us through a practice that you and I can do together.
Great.
So one tip is, so every morning, I suggest choosing something you do in your day. For me, it's walking my beautiful fur baby, Bailey. Children and dogs have a great ability to bring us to the present moment.
They do. Absolutely.
So if you have a pet.
Or cats, right?
Yes, cats too.
Cats count?
Hamsters can work too, and iguanas, whatever you have.
Fish.
So just as a thought, if for me every day I go for a walk, and it's my way to connect to myself and to nature, and I do a really mindful walk. So one tip I suggest, if you have a pet or some other being in your life or yourself that you go, and a ritual that you would do each day. Use that as your practice. Use something that you do routinely. There's a really nice tea ritual just in how you boil the water, and then you make a cup of tea, and you drink the tea, and you're really mindful of all your senses as you experience making tea, or perhaps having a morning shower or a bath, or other ways that any of us can use, that we can adopt in our everyday life, that can be really refreshing.
So that sounds like a way to get into the present moment and experience that non-judgment, just observing, just gathering the information, having experience, instead of putting a value-based judgment on it, and instead of maybe rushing through and getting to the next moment, being in this moment and engaging with the senses, so that you're maybe more right brain dominant and maybe less left brain, so more about feeling and intuition and experience, and less about analyzing and judging. Is that right?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
That sounds really neat. I think we can all try something like that.
Yes, and you said it beautifully. And I'd like to show you, so the audience, what I'm going to ask is, Liz and I are going to do the practice together with you. I'm going to lead it.
Okay.
So all of you, this is something that we can all do. And I will, again, qualify this is a simple practice. It's not an easy practice, but the benefits are very pervasive and wonderful. So I just invite you to follow along with me. And we're going to do a mindful breathing practice together today.
Wonderful.
So if you can, and you can do this anywhere in your home, if you find a chair, you can sit on the bed, your cushion, your yoga mat, your kitchen chair. So if you can join me now and find a comfortable seat, and just ensure that your sits bones, which is the bones underneath your buttocks, are firmly on your chair, your cushion, your floor. Your feet are connected to the earth. And we're going to place our left palm open on our lap and our right palm closed on our lap.
Closed.
And we're going to roll our shoulders back into our sockets and natural, just let them fall. And just allow the spine, it's going to be lengthened and erect. So you think of each vertebrae stacked one upon the other. And then you bring some softness into your shoulders. And you draw your chin towards your sternum. And for the practice, I will be closing my eyes with you. I also invite anyone who is uncomfortable. Some people don't find the experience of closed eyes to be safe. You can find a gentle gaze, a few points, just a few feet in front of you that you can focus on. I'm going to invite you to follow my breath and my voice as much as possible. I apologize, not my breath, but my voice. And we're just going to take a moment to connect to ourselves. We'll take a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And again, just follow your natural breath. So I want you to begin to breathe and choose the avenue for your breath, either through the nostrils or the mouth. Choose what comes easiest for you, so there's no struggle. And just become aware gently of the quality of your breath. So begin to notice if the breath feels warm, or if there's a coolness to the breath. Begin to notice the rise and fall of the abdomen in unison with the natural rhythm of the breath. Notice if the breath feels strained, as it will in some of us. We're not used to bringing attention so acutely to our breath. Or if perhaps there's a nice smoothness and rhythm. a nice resonance to your breath, or somewhere in between. And just begin to be the inner observer, the watcher, so that we come to just watch the breath with curiosity and exploration. Not judging, but allowing whatever arrives. As thoughts and sensations and noises around you arrive, just notice them. Gently label them, thinking, and return your awareness back to that point of contact of the breath. Breathing in, breathing out. Just allowing what is. I invite you now, slowly we'll count to 3 inside our mind's eye. And at that count of 3, still breathing in and breathing out, we'll gently bring awareness back to this room, to our space, and reopen our eyes, feeling connected and present and grounded.
Thank you.
Most welcome.
That was lovely. Thank you. You can just feel the energy in the room, and probably you practicing at home can feel a shift internally. So just take a moment to observe that.
Yes, and please stretch and just do any movement that feels natural for you as you let the experience settle.
Fabulous. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Amy, given the shift that I think those of us who've practiced today with you experience in this few minutes of time, you can really imagine how life-changing mindfulness could be.
Definitely.
What happens if, let's say, life gets busy and we've been in a great routine, and then something happens or we get bad news? How do you restore your sense of mindfulness when everything else sort of feels chaotic or anxiety producing or difficult?
And that is, you're right, that's life. It will be always the ebb and flow of coming in and out. It's a really good question. It's one that practitioners like myself who studied and practiced for years always come back to, beginner's mind. So one is never an expert in this. I always share. My mind is the monkey mind. It's we all have what I like to call a monkey mind. So when stress happens and anxiety, and it always will, life is full of beauty, stress, joy, challenges. What I always, for myself, what I recommend is finding that pause in the ebb and flow of that experience. So the time that we can take to breathe, to step back and to pause can allow us a huge change, whether we respond or whether we react. And most of us react, and that's really normal. And we are humans, so we can never be mindful 100% of the time. What we can do is come back to our cushion. What I do, I have a daily practice on my meditation cushion. I come back to my breath. I pause. What I shared with you, I like to share initially because it's a really good, grounded, simple practice. It is challenging, but the more we practice, the more that you can skillfully devote yourself to a daily practice, the easier it truly becomes. And I say that as someone who has walked what I teach, because I believe in walking what I teach as well.
Mm-hmm.
So what I recommend is, it will definitely, you're going to fall out. Find a time to really connect with that inner observer I spoke to in the meditation. Whether it's, again, coming to doing dishes mindfully, feeling the suds and the warmth of the water, whether it's touching the earth. My teacher Thich Nhat Hanh calls it, as you walk on the earth, you're kissing the earth with your feet. Find an image that speaks to you, that resounds in your heart. Pause, come back to it, and remember to breathe would be what I would suggest and recommend.
Amazing. I'm reminded of a scene in one of my favorite films, Amélie, where she actually puts her hand into an open bin of dry beans as she's going through a market area, and she just pauses, and you can just see that she's experiencing that, and there's a pleasure in that. And I think that for a lot of us going through something as challenging as fertility issues or any other health issues, anxiety, stress, we forget that it's okay to have pleasure.
Right.
And I think the tea example was also really great. You know, I think of, oh, how wonderful would it be to just sit and smell that Earl Grey, maybe decaf Earl Grey, but that the fragrance of that is so lovely, the warmth and the flavor, and like the sensation of getting warmed up as you're drinking it. I mean, all of these things, every moment in life can have something to offer us, right? If we're in it. Definitely. If our mind is in it. Definitely. And I think this practice is something that you can all go back to, so you can scroll back into the video, remind yourself how to practice it, and then, as Amy was saying, the more practice you do something, the easier it is. And we've talked about neural pathways and how our brains are changeable, and how we can build new neural pathways simply by changing our mental traffic, let's put it that way, the pattern of the way neurons are physically firing. Implementing a practice like this is going to train your brain over time for that state to be more default, a more easy to return to state. Whereas when you're first implementing it, like any change you're making in your life for your health, there's some inertia to overcome, and that's why I think it can feel so challenging to either start it or even to get back to it, even if you know you've practiced before.
Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah.
One
What were you
thing
going to say?
Recommend, just in that too, I'm part of a sangha. So when Liz mentioned that, sometimes a group of people that support you in your practice is so empowering. I'm a true believer in community, and there's some wonderful groups here in Guelph that meet. There's some sanghas, meditation sanghas, where you practice mindfulness for 2 hours, and there is some wonderful teachers here in our Guelph community, as well as the Center for Mindfulness in Toronto, which has some incredible programs, including mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. So I just want you to know that there is lots of support out there for you, because when you are learning something new, that is a really big connection and way to stay grounded in your practice. So I wanted to offer you that as well.
Oh, thank you for those resources.
You're welcome.
How can people find out more, connect with you about the classes or the trainings that you have to offer?
So I currently am part of a leadership with the mindfulness community of Guelph. And so you can Google that. The teachings are under Thich Nhat Hanh, who is an amazing Vietnamese monk. So you can look that up. It happens twice a month in Guelph. And you can also Google the Mindfulness Center in Toronto. They have some wonderful programs, as well as John Kabat-Zinn. The people I've mentioned that are gurus have some incredible books and mindfulness practices on YouTube, as well as, I think, connected to your iPod. So I encourage you to look into those avenues.
It's a multimedia opportunity, isn't it?
Yes.
Books and classes and videos, and you can implement it in a way that works for you.
Definitely.
Amazing. Well, go mindfully, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
You're welcome.
Such deep appreciation for you, Amy, and for the gifts that you have to share. I really appreciate you taking the time to bless us with that gift of that practice today. I think that's a tool that we can all benefit from going forward. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you all. Namaste.
Namaste.